Hi, I'm Paula Ward, and this is Easy Knitting Design. This is my model Nikki, and we'll be taking her measurements. I'll be using those measurements throughout these videos to knit a sweater for Nikki. Later on, we'll have a real person to try the sweater on so that you can see, in fact, it does fit. It's impossible to take your own measurements accurately, so be sure and have a friend help you. To take measurements, you'll need some pins, a tape measure, and a few yards of scrap yarn. I've created a PDF form for taking measurements that you can download and print. You'll find the link on my website. To make measuring easier, I've placed a few markers. First, I tie a string underneath Nikki's arms, right where I want the sleeve to meet the body. Now, I don't want to put this yarn too high so that the sleeve will bind, but I don't want it too low, which would make the armhole too big, so put it at a height that's comfortable. I tie a yarn around the waist and one around the hips where I want the sweater to end, so at the hem of the sweater. Now this yarn around the hips should be parallel to the ground. Up on Nikki's shoulders, I've placed pins along the very top of her shoulder. I've placed pins at that little bone on either side of her shoulder. And at the front, Nikki and I talked earlier, and she showed me how wide she wanted the neck of her sweater. So I placed those pins in front and then place pins at the exact same spot in the back because we'll be measuring that neck width from the back. The bust measurement is around the fullest part of the bust with the tape parallel to the floor. I'll take the waist measurement. The hip measurement is around the yarn around the hips, again with the tape parallel to the floor. I'll take the upper arm measurement at the fullest part of the upper arm. Now I'm going to take another measurement around the elbow. And the reason I do this is I'll be knitting the sleeve from the top down, and I want to be sure I don't narrow the sleeve too early on. I'll also take a wrist measurement. I measure the arm length around the bent arm from the armpit down to the wrist. I also notice at what point my elbow measurement lands on this distance. If you're knitting a round-necked sweater, place a pin where you want the bottom of the curve to fall in front. Then measure from the top of the shoulder straight down to the level of the pin. This is the front neck depth. I'll measure the back neck width between the two pins I've placed. I'll measure the shoulder width between the two shoulder pins I've placed. Now I'm going to use this underarm yarn for measurements. Notice that the yarn rides up in the front, and that's okay. First I'll measure my armhole depth, which is from the shoulder pin down to the yarn at the edge of the shoulder where the arm meets the shoulder. Next, I'll measure my back length. I start at the pin, marking the back neck width, and at the top of the shoulder, also marked by a pin, and measure all the way down to the hip yarn. Along the way, I'm going to notice where the underarm yarn falls, where the waist yarn falls, and where the hip yarn falls. Now on Nikki's sweater, I won't be using this waist measurement because I'm not going to do any shaping at the waistline. But if I knit her another sweater and I do want to use that, I'll already have that measurement. Here's the measurement form all filled out. The next step is to knit a swatch to get your stitch gauge. If you've already done that, start your sweater with knitting the body. You can watch these and other video tutorials at easyknittingdesign.com.